Why are you down at 80%, bro? Maybe you were yelling last time.
Probably from like Black Mage with Gambler Crew like 2 years ago.
Probably, yeah. Long time.
So I mean, yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about any specifics or anything, but in general, I think the class is fine again, and maybe was not in that state for some years.
For a while, right? Yeah. Well, I guess
Um,
I guess the whole purpose with this, I felt like I kind of had to decide going into. I wanted my account to be able to supply me with a bunch of black hearts, so I could switch in, right? Because even though we knew that probably there was a perma heart coming, especially when they were like teasing Lotus, um, we knew that we needed a bunch of black hearts on the in the pile to be able to actually switch for pitch waiting room. So
yeah, for sure.
I had to decide like who am I going to continue, and at that point I had a 250. I had a bunch of 250s, but I didn't know. I had to really look at like, do I want to push this character? And the main problem I had with Ice Lightning at that point was it's a little bit of like buttons to set up, and they have to be in one place. And if the boss even moves out of that a little bit, you lose quite a bit of damage for your DPM. The duration of the key down was like my main concern. And then back when lightning worked like that, where it just like went through the whole map, there was just a chance to kind of miss it completely. Um, and even though I preferred teleport classes for the bossing mules, at that point I was like, I don't think I want to, you know, commit to this character for another 5 levels and for liberation and for 6 job and unlock. It was just too much for this character. So then I dropped it. And
Yeah,
I always just felt like it kept falling a little bit in between the cracks between like a bishop, because of course bishop was so good back then that you had a lot of people probably job change at that point. I don't know if you considered it or did it back then.
yeah. I liberated as a bishop when I was
Hmm.
underleveled because like you can't run back in the day at least you couldn't run BM with the massive level penalty and still like be relevant
Yep.
for the party, but it was really easy to just press Benny.
Yep.
So I like half lived as a bishop while I was leveling, and then like I told my party during night troop, we're running beginning of the month this month and end of the month next month, and I'm training for 7 weeks and switching to Ice Lightning. If
Hmm.
you guys aren't okay with that, I'll run with someone else. Luckily, my party was all friends, so it worked out. But
Yeah, yeah, it works out
yeah,
well.
I was bishop for a little bit in between, just so that I could start my lib, whatever, like 3 or 4 years ago. That like
Hmm.
5 iterations of Maple ago, because the game
Yeah,
changes so much every year.
yeah, it's great. Almost every 6 months you get like a whole new chapter in the book that is MapleStory.
Yeah, so
Um,
a lot of those
yeah,
concerns are super valid, but are all fixed at this point.
good.
Lightning Orb's channel is much, much shorter. It used to be 3.6, and with the end lag, it was like over 4 seconds of locking your character up.
Yeah,
Now it's a little less than two,
and
and
on
you
a 60
can
second
almost
cooldown, right?
immediately. Yeah, so it's always
Yeah,
been 60, but for a while we
yeah.
had the Vank Charm bug where it would go to 55 and then reset to 60,
Oh, yeah,
which
cool.
was
Yeah.
really cool. They fixed that finally,
Oh,
maybe a
because it like
year or two ago.
started after when you were done regular,
Yeah, it
rather than
reset the
when you
CD when you
start.
stop
Yeah.
channeling.
Yeah,
So it
Arc had
was
that.
like
The
a
Arc keydown
yeah,
had that forever as well. Yeah.
yeah. So then for like most of the last year, year and a half, whenever sixth came out, this skill was actually so bad with how long it took to channel and how bad its damage was relative to chain lightning that you just took it off your keyboard.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be your like marquee burst skill, like cool identity thing
Yeah.
from like
Hmm.
back before even fifth. And yeah, you just took it off your keyboard for a year. So they buffed it again slightly with the second mastery, but it wasn't really enough. So that made
Hmm.
you put it back on your keyboard, but with attack speed, it
Barely.
was
Yeah.
still not much better than Chain Lightning because AS10 is already so much different than AS8.
Right. So that's
Um,
purely like a GMS thing because of the attack speed that
yeah,
like
it's worth
pushed it
like a
over the
little
edge.
bit better than two Chain Lightnings. So in KMS, that was like good enough, but in GMS, it's like 1.3 or something. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
barely better.
Hmm.
So with it locking up your character, it was still like you can use it if you want, but if you don't want to use it, it's really not going to affect your damage profile. But now in the current state, we like everyone remembers it being this like big burst thing. Like
Yeah.
back in the day, FP was a DPM class, Ice Lightning was a burst class, and Bishop was a support.
Yeah. Exactly.
All
That
three are
used to
con
be,
classes now.
and then yeah. Now they're all
So
DPM.
yeah, all three are continuous classes now because
Yeah.
Bolt Barrage is insanely buffed compared to where it was a couple of years ago.
Well,
Um,
and the change to unreliable memory also pushed them in that direction, right? With the second
Yeah.
Infinity being reliable, that just pushed them towards DPM even more so.
Yeah, you basically have 100% uptime. If there's no
Yeah,
event buff, you have like in the mid 90s. But if
90
there's an
plus.
event
Yeah.
buff, then you're actually 100% as long as you don't play
Yep.
badly. Even if
Hmm.
you actual 1% low roll, the max cooldown on unreliable, it's still fine.
Yeah. And if you high roll,
So,
then a single one has 100% uptime, right?
uh, well, it depends on which cooldown you're using because the real one has a 180, but unreliable is usually around 240.
Yeah,
So
I
then,
used one time, and then by the time it ran out and it was blinking, it was already coming back up, and the other one was also available. So it's basically
so
just
that was
cycling on a single one.
probably some crazy night troop effect because they start at 41 with DCO,
Hmm.
and it's really hard to get over 200 buff, and you would need like around 300 buff to have one be
Yeah, all
perm
right.
uptime.
Hmm.
Then the regular one would just be good all the time. But
Yeah, gotcha.
given that they're usually 2 minutes, and this one's
Hmm.
real cooldown is only 180, and the low roll on this is 4, the 1% low roll at level 30, you
Hmm.
have it up all the time if you're in the right setup.
Yeah, yeah.
So then Bolt Barrage is also like really a 37, right? Because everyone has a 250 merc if you're talking about endgame.
Yep.
So every 37 seconds is really nice to take a chunk out of something.
Hmm.
Um, some of the annoyance with the bind for a really long time was that this class had a 3-minute bind on a 2-minute kit. They finally fixed that this
Yeah,
patch
that was the other thing.
in
Yeah.
exchange for some seconds of iframe that you already basically never used
Weren't
as an
using
iframe
anyway.
anyway.
Yeah.
Like, do you need to be
You have
iframe for
ethereal, right?
13 seconds with a
Yeah.
Jenny? Then like, I don't know what you're fighting, but it's not the boss. But
Did you
some of
see a
the cooldowns are
difference
still
in
like,
like
oh
your
yeah,
your BAs and your bursts chunks
yeah,
and
it was like
everything?
8 FD this patch, and it was like another 5-ish just from when they buffed Bolt Barrage in the past. I
Yep.
think this
Okay.
class is actually stronger than FP right now.
Yep. But definitely for like Kalos, right?
Yeah, your burst is better, but my Kalos BA is only like a little bit higher in Origin than not in Origin because even though they cleaned up a lot of other stuff, our Origin is weird for a burst
Hmm.
class. It's like a flashy cutscene and then 30 seconds of AoE after it. But the damage
Yeah.
split is 60% in the cutscene, 40% in the AoE. So it's really another Spirit of Snow instead of a nice burst skill,
Hmm.
which is
Hmm.
kind of unfortunate for the one that's supposed to be bursty. So if you
Yeah.
just like abandon that idea that it's supposed to be the burst one, then it kind of stays fun and all this stuff makes sense, but it is not that identity anymore. It is not bursty.
Yeah. It
Um,
almost felt like with the Origins, they tried to for a lot of classes just give the more DPM-y classes a burst one, and then the bursty ones a more DPM-y one. And I guess they counted as lightning as a bursty one, so they wanted to give it a more DPM-y one. And
yeah,
then,
yeah,
but they didn't for everything, because like the Night Lord one, first they make it DPM-y, right? But then they just made it burst as well, and the Arc one has always been burst, and now even more burst. So there's definitely exceptions to the rule. But there's a lot of classes where you think, especially the more, and I think the main thing is that because they are shifting towards the smaller parties, right, with Extreme Lotus and with Limbo and everything, and shifting the benefit definitely towards DPM classes, of course, also because of continuous 5 rings, that they wanted to make sure that the DPM classes in the future didn't get extremely overtuned with their origins, because then you'd have like all the burst and all the DPM all in one class. So they wanted to kind of like keep mellowing it out
yeah,
so they could balance it later. Is kind of what it looked like to me. But of course, they're going to have to constantly adjust numbers as the performance changes.
yeah. They also just like when they made Hexa Chain Lightning, this skill is just so much better than everything else in your kit. It's
Yeah,
like 40% of your BA in every situation, pretty much no matter what.
damn, yeah.
And that plus Thunderstorm or whatever they renamed it to, Thunder Orb, Thunder Sphere. It got a stupid name.
The
It's not
sphere,
Thunderstorm
yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
Is like 5 to 8 depending on how long the fight is. Like that's half of your damage coming from your primary attack and a summon. Like
and the
there's
summon.
not that much left to be your burst.
No, wait. So
Even like
the Jupiter Thunder plus the lightning plus the key down, it's still not that
so Jupiter
crazy.
still FD boosts Chain Lightning also. And
Yeah,
even though your burst is long, like I have Roar 5, so it's you can consider it 20 instead of
27.
15.
Mm-hmm.
You're still done pressing buttons in like 3 or 4 seconds, except for
Yeah.
maybe if you're origining, and then you're just holding down Chain Lightning for the rest of all of those buffs towards the
So
end of the Infinity with AB and Epic,
mm-hmm.
whatever, all your stuff active. So
Yeah.
you're still chain lightninging for most of the time that you're quote bursting with all those buffs, and Jupiter is still FD boosting only your lightning skills, and your origin doesn't count as a lightning skill. So it's really only boosting Bolt Barrage and chain lightning.
I see. That might be a thing they changed though. I mean, it's called Frozen Lightning, right? This should count as
yeah,
lightning,
but it
you
specifically
think?
says it isn't.
Yeah. They probably tested
it's not
for that,
affected
yeah.
by Frozen Light, Jupiter Thunder. It's like in the description. But
And the Hexa, do you throw the Frozen Orb out at all during bossing, or is it just a DPM?
Yeah, so Frozen
loss?
Orb's a scam.
Yeah, I thought so.
You need
It
to
looks
cast
really cool
it to
though, right?
maintain. Yeah, well, it's nice and mobbing, except they gave us Janna, so you don't need it. But you
Yeah,
need
yeah,
to
yeah.
cast it anyway because of ice stacks, even though it's a bad skill.
Yeah.
Because you eat ice stacks too fast, and your ice stacks are really good. It's like a bunch of crit damage and
Crit
regular
damage,
damage.
Is it not enough to put your Sub-Zero or whatever it is out there?
So when you put that down is when you're bursting, and that's also when you have Jupiter Thunder ripping through stacks.
Yeah.
So
it's not
when you
enough?
have extra stacks, you're also eating them extra fast.
Yeah.
So it's about the same. You don't explicitly need to cast it during Absolute Zero Aura, because Spirit of Snow is also giving you ice stacks, as is Ice Age. But off burst, even if you're just holding down Chain Lightning, you'll eat them faster than Elkeens and Zero Aura can put them in. So
basically,
you have
want
to
look at
cast
it like the cane stacks, basically, right? Like you're constantly getting the debuff stacks, then consuming them with the assassinate stacks. Yeah.
But the Hexa one stays in the boss. So the old one, you would like cast it, and then you'd have to kind of stand towards the edge of the character model and get it to try to like flow through.
Yeah, it'll slow down, but it would still keep moving, kind of thing.
Yeah. So this one just kind of hugs it. Like one cast will stay in whatever boss you're fighting, even if it's like a skinny one like Lotus or Vihila.
Yeah. Okay.
So you don't need to like really worry about spacing that much anymore. And then Bolt Barrage is just Shuriken. So you just stand on the boss and press it twice, and you're good with that too. So a lot of the like clunk is gone.
That's good.
And it's pretty easy to play also, because like you really don't have to do much during your burst. You just press Spirit, press Bind, press Ice Age, mark with Jupiter, and then tap this and hold this down. Like it's the same as every other class's burst. It's just you press the right buttons in order. There's nothing complicated. You don't have to wait for the boss to be in some corner state or
yeah. I remember those days, like try to get Damien into the corner, chain lightning, so everything hits on him. Get some.
Yeah, I still do Vihila in the corner, just like because of this class. Like I get flamed for like, oh, corner strap. I'm like, no, there's a real reason. Like I had to learn it this way. But I think this class is fine, and it looks like we're at least with the preliminary KMST numbers. That it's a really good change, like on those new skills as well. The new passive is very, very good, and it seems like it's bugged in a way that's like nerfed compared to what it's supposed to do. And we're still getting a lot of FD because all the cores are just numbers. We can kind of predict the FD pretty reliably, and it should be like 16 FD in Korea. Without accounting for attack speed.
What are the main skills there still? Is it the Spirit of Snow?
So they gave us Orb.
Right?
They gave us Orb, and then they gave us Thunder Sphere and Elkeens, and then they gave us a new passive. So Thunder Sphere is good and buffed to be a couple FD. Elkeens is awful and got double base damage and is still less than 1 FD. The skill is horrible. Orb got a reasonable numbers buff that I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but with the QLL to Orb, it's already a good skill anyway.
Wait,
so
for Elkeens, what percentage are you talking for Elkeens when you say it's horrible? It's like 2 or 3% of your total damage?
Sub 1.
Sub 1, okay, yeah. So
it's an ice stack machine. It's horrendous.
Okay, so at least it enables your crit damage then, right? Yeah. But damage-wise, it's like below the boss summons.
Yeah,
like
you need to press it.
The Arachnid and the Saren skill. Those do more damage, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and especially with all the FD from Infinity, those are like over 1 each.
That's kind of wild.
And then the fourth one is a passive that just triggers every 13 ice stacks you eat and does it's like 1090 or 1100%. It's a good skill.
Okay.
But right now in KMST it's bugged where it triggers every 13 attacks instead. So like when you use a lightning orb or you use a Jupiter, it only eats 1 stack even through the whole duration of lightning orb, which is definitely not intended because that's not how any of the other ice stack stuff works. And it's still 16 FD with that. So if they fix that, it's over 20 and with like attack speed, like basically if they don't change any numbers, I think Ice Lightning is like an insane class with those cores.
That's good. Yeah. Because yeah,
But
I
right now
always
it's
felt
still
like it
fine.
was it
So
was definitely underperforming for a while there. Yeah, I think about a year. That's about fair to say, right? For about a year, they
so
were.
for like a year it was weak, like
Yeah.
really like why would you pick this class week? And then for a while after that, it was just Bishop exists, so why would you pick a different lane on the highway? Where it was still fine, but you would never see anyone pick it. Now with the Bishop
Yeah.
nerfs, I think it's just like an actual reasonable choice.
Yeah. Yeah, and FP
So
kind of struggles more in like Kalos progression, right? Because your burst is just can never be good enough, even if you're completely juiced up.
yeah, so it depends on like what thing you're doing because with all the support nerfs and the like support stacking meta changing, if you have
Mm-hmm.
to chip, FP is very easy to chip with. So it
Yeah.
depends on if you're trying to, 6-man one burst or 6-man just double
Right.
2 minute, or if you're
Yeah.
okay
Yeah.
with some chip. But I think they're all playable at this point. Like
Yeah.
I'm happy
Mm-hmm.
with the balance of Explorer Mage, where for a while there was a lot of clunk and one was out of tune usually, either too high or too low. And I
Yeah.
think all three are. Bishop might still be a little too good, but that's whatever. That's Bishop.
It's purely into
But I
six
think
mans,
they're
I
all
think, right?
within bounds.
But
Yeah, yeah,
if
yeah,
you go to like a 4-man or a 3-man, you definitely not gonna see. Or if you have like a really really strong DPS, or you could pick a bishop as something that's more inexperienced or something, you'd be like, let's just go for the DPS, go with the certainty instead
yeah.
of
But
getting
the
like
solo play's
everyone.
okay. So
Yeah.
like, I think
Mm-hmm.
that whatever the first limbo parties we see once we get third and fourth mastery are definitely going to
Yeah.
have
We'll see. Yeah.
Nitaru and whoever, like the Giga Bishops that are already holding their ground if they didn't
Mm-hmm.
press Benny, plus they have Benny, like
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
But that kind of
but
goes
yeah, for
into if you had like a really good time and you had a long time to capitalize on the class that you were, you're gonna still be ahead, right? It's kind of like the old Kanas when Kana got nerfed. It's like, oh no, Kana's so terrible now. But the strongest Kanas always will keep surviving because they were able to
yeah,
make billions and trillions of mesos, maybe even over their lifetime because of what they had. So they're still going to be ahead by a little bit.
yeah. So
Yeah,
I don't
that
know if
never
that
hurts.
answered any of the questions, but
Yeah, because my main idea was just like I felt like Ice Lightning didn't have like an identity anymore, and didn't for a while was just kind of like there are three picks, but why would you ever pick that side? Like if you want DPM, you pick that one, and if you want to mob and DP and do solo things, you pick the fire poison, and if you want to do things with a party, you pick the bishop. And Ice Lightning was kind of like an unnecessary third wheel at that point, and that felt really
yeah,
bad. Not like I was personally invested in it, but it just felt really shitty for people who do play that class, and basically forcing people to job change. Back in the day, that could be a thing that you could then do, and like you said, like you can lib and you can keep switching over when you're libbing as one of the only branches, right? Like only Shadow and Dual Blade can do that too. To be able to make sure that you can get to that end game and you don't have to switch any of your gear. But with the
yeah.
changes,
With Hexa,
yeah,
you
the
can't
fact
do
that
that
you would have
anymore.
to redo your hexa, that's just completely
Yeah,
unforgivable. That's not even remotely an option anymore. So once you're in, and you got to stay in, and it's kind of like like with Jet disappearing or something like that. When having played Demon Avenger for a long time, and then basically from the moment that Fifth Shop came out until the Destiny update, DA was basically just bottom of the barrel, together with Bishop for like a super long time, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I kind of don't want any class to be in that situation, knowing what that was
yeah,
like for those years.
yeah. It still
So it's
doesn't
good to hear.
really have an identity because it,
Hmm.
it it will kind of always share the same space as Luminous, where like
Yeah,
they both basically have Chain Lightning as their
chain lightning
primary
reflection.
thing,
Yeah,
and like they're both
and a door
DPM-ish
and a
mages,
spirit, right?
like with a big summon. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
There's a lot of overlap with their identities.
yeah.
But I play a Lumi at Endgame in Bara, and Ice Lightning is doing a lot better than Lumi. I'll tell you that much. Lumi is kind of forgotten about at this point. Like
I
almost
don't
feels like
know.
Phantom and some of the other bottom
Yeah.
ones. Ice
Hmm.
Lightning doesn't feel forgotten about anymore.
No, that's good. I think it's also because it's an explorer, right? And there's still always some
Yeah,
people hardcore fighting for explorers to make sure that they stay getting something, because there's just so many people who've been playing those for 2 decades at this point, so they want to make sure they keep sending some love to that class. But yeah,
yeah.
you'd hate to
And we
see
got
that a class just gets forgotten if nobody on the team there keeps fighting specifically for that class to get something. That wouldn't be
yeah.
good. So there's got to be some
We
internal review system.
we got a little lucky also that when they nerfed Bishop in KMS, a few of the top bishops said basically, "Thank goodness I hated playing Bishop. It was just too broken." and they got to switch off, including an insane whale who's all double or triple primes with a finished limbo ring, switched to Ice Lightning. So we have a Pengi in our class that should protect us for the long term from getting absolutely guttered. So
it is crazy to have that possible fallback. So what did they do? And then in KMS, if they switch, they just buy all the fragments, and then the energy becomes like a huge bottleneck. Then though, right?
In KMS Reg, you have the auction house for fragments, and you have the cash shop for the Urda packages. So you can get, I think it's 10 Urda a week for NX, and then also sometimes special deals where they package Urda with some other stuff that goes over that cap. Plus, you can 9x the dungeon.
Oh, the dungeon. Yeah, okay. True, yeah.
So you can get a lot really quickly. And then in GMS, we can't buy Urda, but we have Frenzy. So, like, I'm also Max Hexa and Reg, but it's trivial. You get 4 or 5 Urda an hour while you're training.
Yeah, that's way more than what we get,
Yeah. So, and you can still buy the frags in the auction house, because we got that change about a year
ago. I guess if you have the option, we just always default to the frags, but if you have the option, you would default to the energy and then just buy some more frags because they're cheap, right?
Yeah, for a while they were like 2 mil each, and now with the Sunny Sunday coming up, they were trending towards 1 mil each, but now they're back up to 3-ish in Bara. But for reference, it's still in the Meso market. Legitimate Meso price is about 4.5 for a bill. Yeah. So you're looking at, roughly a penny for a fragment, which is, that's very cheap.
Oh, okay. Last thing then, because you mentioned the Meso market with the notification of the cross server thing. You think the Bara market is going to go way down or way up, or what's your projection on that?
It's weird because they already kind of teased that they were thinking about doing that for us when they had that first Inkwell note, before Go West.
Well, that was for a full merge, right? That they didn't want to do that quite yet. I think it's because they knew that this was probably coming, so they want to see how that plays out first.
Yeah, we also have a lot different of a population spread. I'd say it's probably like 60% Bara, 30% Scania, 5% Aurora and Elysium each. It is really disparate. So I think it'll be bad for Bara and good for everyone else, because right now we have a ton of Frenzy and a ton of supply, and a lot of endgame players being able to talk or sell their mid-game and late-game gear as they move up. Yeah. And in the emptier servers, there's a dearth of that stuff. So when they come over to Bara, our Meso is worthless because so many people train and buy service, and there's also plenty of botters in every server. Whatever, that's a GMS problem. But
aren't the smaller servers aren't people able to pick up really expensive items kind of cheap because there's not too many people who want to buy? Because if you even increase the demand by 10%, there just needs to be one person there who's an absolute beluga Cthulhu whale who's just willing to pay 3x what someone else is willing to buy, and then suddenly the average value of an item goes way up, right?
Yeah, but that gear has to exist. So someone has to pick that. People will cube the generic gear and maybe they high roll your stat, right? You can find a crazy source that's got a great B-pot if someone rolled the wrong stat. But if someone's picking an Eternal, they're picking their Pirate Eternal. Even if they roll triple prime int, it's not helping anyone.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It
has to be pitched, right? Yeah, I was talking more about pitch drops or something. Yeah. For Eternals, that wouldn't work at all.
So those just have to be someone has to be rolling it in the market.
Yeah.
And in the smaller servers, there's not as many people buying or selling stuff. So there's also not as many people with great gear. So all the pitch bosses are pretty easy at this point. But anything when the Limbo ring comes out, there are going to be servers that have 1 or fewer H Limbo parties maybe, or maybe 5 or fewer, but way less than any KMS server.
No, okay.
So if they have low supply of the endgame items, then there just aren't that many to be rolled into your stat.
Yeah, I get that. I was just thinking of the really rare, pitch is still relatively rare, but if you have, let's say, if you have 10 eye patches or something in Bara, and you have 10 times the demand, and you have just one in a smaller server, relatively, the smaller server is probably going to be selling higher, right? You think?
So if you look at the TC prices, Bara has the highest TC prices by almost a factor of 2.
Yeah.
Which is a similar example of, it's only from X-Lot and everyone wants it.
Okay, so they would start because our Bezos quote unquote is worth less, so they would feel
Yeah,
like they're
it's worth
getting
less
more.
USD, but it's
Yeah,
worth
yeah.
more Meso because
Okay.
some of the other servers have almost double our Meso price. But
Yeah, because
like
I
in the
was thinking
auction
I
house,
should.
our stuff's cheaper. So
Yeah, okay. Because I was thinking like, should I? Because I have a little bit of mezzo from like flipping stuff in Barra, and I was like, should I try to sell it all off before the general public starts becoming aware of the prices changing as well, or do I hold on to it? Because
I think the easiest thing to do with anyone who has money in any of these servers is just whenever they announce an event, you turn your money, like you turn your Maple points into Meso like 2 weeks before Shining, and then you sell
hmm
it in the first hour of Shining back into Maple points, and then you do the opposite thing on Cube Sale, and you don't ever have to do really anything other than that, and you'll make +1 of whatever the number is. So you'll make 5 to 4 if it's at 4 to 1, or you'll make 7 to 6, whatever. It always jumps about $1.50 predictably the
hmm
first few hours of those major events. So if you just do that, you don't have to
okay.
putz around with the auction house or any market factors or try to worry about are people holding all their frags or are they selling all their frags or
hmm
who's going to eat how many during the sunny Sunday, stuff like that. It, you can maybe squeeze out a little extra profit there, but for the most
Or
part, you just
okay.
the same stuff we do in Reboot. People hoard. If you could buy Eternal Spares for the same thing, people want
Yeah.
Eternal Spares a lot more on Shining than on a regular week, but you might pick the wrong class or the wrong one, so
Yeah, yeah.
it's
There's
easier to
always
just
some.
keep it as Meso.
Yeah.
Um, but
Okay.
yeah, the market in Reg is also not a great simulation of a microeconomy because a lot of
No.
people
Yeah.
just seem to not know what's going on. Like
Yeah.
Slime Ring is like 160 mil.
hmm
Dawn Slime Ring is 230 mil, and they both sell regularly. But
It's a 10 mil
everyone knows that the
scroll.
scroll
Yeah.
is 10 mil. What's going on there? I can't tell you, but it's been that way for 2 years. I
I'll
don't
do.
know.
Yeah, no, I'll have the same thing. I mean, you just go. I think the problem is that when people have a lot of money, a lot of mezzo, especially you don't know how they get it, but if they don't know exactly what their mezzo is worth, they'll just see it as a difference of the amount rather than a difference of the percentage, right? So like, I can sell an arcane weapon that usually sells for like 150. And if there's none for sale, I could just sell it for 300 because people think like, what's another 150? It doesn't really matter. But that's
Sure.
double the price. If you sell everything
Yeah.
at double the price, like it, that's how I made all my money. I bought a lot of arcane weapons, all between like 3 and 15 mil, basically. 10 mil average. I bought 300 of them, and then I sold them all when the box change came through, when all of the values inevitably went up a lot. And even the cheaper ones are still selling for like 200 mil each now that I bought for like 4 or 5.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it takes a long time to sell them, but percentage-wise, the flip
Yeah.
is
You made a
insane.
killing.
Yeah, I made like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
something like 4,500% profit or something. So it's like,
Yeah. I would do that with vac pets, but the initial investment on a vac pet is almost $300, so it's not really.
yeah, it's kind of what people say. Like you need to invest in real estate. It's like, well, yeah, you need enough
You need to have
money
money to
down
invest it. Yeah.
to get started. Yeah, you need to do some other stuff first before you can start
Yeah.
with that. Yeah.
But I
Okay.
think even if it does end up being a net negative, like if it's
hmm
bad for Barra and good for everyone else, and that's somehow like bad for 10% more players than it's good for,
hmm
it's still like important that Reg makes changes so that it can thrive and
Yeah.
survive.
hmm
Because right now there's not really anything wrong with Reg except for that we don't have tradable cubes and tradable return scrolls. So like you
hmm
have to do some weird service stuff with trusting people, and there's some issues with items that you've equipped where you can't like PSOC them enough times.
And the karma
But
stuff and the limits on the trading.
yeah,
Yeah.
so like you just make your items before you equip them, and then that's fine. But there's risk. Like if you're a rebooter and you have 30k Maple points, or that's not what it's called, reward points, you can
hmm
sell me 6 return scrolls for 3 or 4 bill. But I have to know who you are. I'm not giving you my Eternal worth hundreds of dollars to some stranger. You should just be able to sell that at the return scrolls in the auction house, just like they
Yeah.
can in KMS.
hmm That would
Like,
also just
they,
make them more affordable, make the whole system
yeah.
safer and better. Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong, quote unquote, with Reg anymore. They have plugged a lot of the holes, but like, why would you spend a bunch of money to just play Reboot without FD passive? Right? There's still no
hmm
draw. Just because it's not broken doesn't mean it's good.
That's because
So
you're already in, right? If you're already invested, you stay. That makes sense.
yeah, yeah, it's self funding at this point, and I use the meso I get from weeklies to buy like the candles and stuff like that in Reboot and the battle passes. Because
Yeah, that does help. Yeah, that does help you scale up there a little bit faster. There's definitely some cross contamination benefit. I wish that they would make the what was the Burning World? What's going to be now the what is it like the
Challenger
Ultra
World,
the Challenger World? If that's something that both of the regions can use to make sure that they can actually like mutually beneficial for both kind of thing, I think that could be. But still, like you're not the average player, right? Like the average player has no time to like get two characters over 280 on two different servers with like two 9K legions.
Yeah.
Like that's just not possible for most people. Although they are giving away like free 4K legion, right? You saw those potions.
Yeah, that's gonna be weird though, because that's not normally how World Leap works. Usually, you only get to leap 5 characters. So
Yeah.
I don't know what they're gonna do with the 21 characters, your main plus the 20 they give you. Like that's an insane amount to leap.
I think
I
those
wonder if they're
items you're gonna
gonna.
get on the server afterward or something, and that you'll
Oh,
just
okay, that would make more sense then.
the way
So
I
you would
saw
World
it
Leap
is
out with the
basically
pot.
yeah, it's like a contest in there to see how far you get. And then based on how far you get the rewards, and then you get to put those rewards somewhere else. Because I saw no indication of a world leap whatsoever. But
Oh,
we're
you don't
talking
even
about
think you keep. Well, if they're letting you use your Giga Hyperburn there, they must let you leap out the one character.
if they let you use that, yeah. And they said 3 teraburns, I think, instead of 3 megaburns.
Yeah, so that's a lot better too, because that's at this
Yeah,
point at
it's
least
probably the same cap
a lot
5,
of
then.
yeah, because a lot of the point of Burning World right now is character slots because they cost $7 in Reg and
Yeah.
are not 0 like in Reboot. So
You have some reward
when you World
point
Leap
ones, right?
out,
Or...
well, there's a few for reward points, but I think it's 1 per month, and then there's a lot in every event shop. But when you World Leap, you overcap the like the character count. So if you have like 0 slots, you can World Leap out all 5, and you get 5 permanent slots. So that is like most of the value of Burning World is just getting free character slots. So a lot of people will just do the 150s that are mega burned because that's the minimum to World Leap out, and then never touch the world again because it doesn't have frenzy. So why would like all the Burning World changes are still nowhere near as good as Server 3x.
Yeah. That's
So,
yeah, and then the new Legion system spike is going to be interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. Reg is its own problem for GMS, but GMS Reboot has a bunch of problems on the horizon too, with some of these EXP curve problems where we can't buy the EXP that Reg can, but the content is still like leveling faster than we can.
Just seeing 5 levels is really if you don't adjust the curve at all, it becomes completely unreachable to a lot of people to get into that content. I was definitely expecting some kind of EXP curve changes with this. It's a little weird that like something from like 60 to 275 or something, or from 270 to 280, something like that. But maybe they're waiting on that a little bit longer.
Yeah, but we'll see. I have faith. Team GMS or whatever the name of the team below Inkwell is has done, at least in my opinion, a pretty solid job the last 6 months. I've been, always ready to just get bent over by Nexon from the past few years of what they've taught us, where they just will always take advantage of us every time they can. But I think it's looking okay. I hope that in the roughly year or whatever the timeline Inkwell said he was going to need to get the team up to speed, that we actually see some changes that we need. Something with EXP, something with pitched, just some of the core problems in Reboot versus the regular game that now KMS is never going to fix because they don't have a Reboot anymore.
Yeah, just like the weapon. Yeah, well, they'll have to, right? Yeah, just like the weapon stuff where we knew that they weren't really going to do much with the Liberation until there's a new weapon. So now that we see that new weapon, then immediately they're also speeding up the process. I think in a similar way, once we have more bright pieces on the horizon, then they'll also just get the run up to pitch way easier. It's probably going to be too late for a lot of people, but at least the next generation won't run into the same problems as much. Plus,
well, then you just move the ball, though, right? Then they'll just have that problem with Brilliant.
Yeah,
instead.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I it's kind of weird at this point how Abzab is almost harder to get than Arcane. It's like a little bit.
No one wants to do the weeklies.
Yeah, because of those weeklies. But now they just do item burning, so I guess they're just trying to bypass the problem that way. Well, anyway, we could talk forever.
Yeah.
But thanks for sharing your thoughts on Ice Lightning. So you say sell Meso for Maple points when there's cube sale?
I would buy Meso a few weeks before Shining, and then sell the Meso back into Maple points shortly after Shining starts, when everyone has like burned whatever they had in the first half hour, and is desperately buying more money, because that's really like once it's 2 or 3 hours into the event, the spike is over. People have already bought whatever spares they needed and spent whatever money they wanted. And then the opposite
so
for cube sale, right?
People
want Maple points for their money during cube sale.
Yeah.
So if you have the Maple points then
Makes
you're getting
sense.
the premium that way. But
so you wouldn't
that's
necessarily do anything when like the cross-world stuff comes out. You're not expecting people to go too crazy, or you would just look at the market and see if it actually
it's going to be really volatile for the week that they
That's what I'm
announce that.
expecting.
But I don't know what way it'll be volatile, and I think you're just kind of flipping coins like buying
it is hard to
penny
predict.
stocks or shit coins. So
yeah, because I thought
wouldn't
selling
gamble
would
like
be
that.
just like safer, because your Maple points are probably a more stable currency than the Meso at that point.
Yeah, but everything's just
But it could
related
be-
to the dollar value of Meso.
Yeah, it could go the other way around, and then you'd have to like
Right.
instantly sell again. But you could do a whole bunch of listings. But yeah, I guess I'll
But just
keep an eye on it,
because Meso is fluid, because it's still tied to roughly, it's tied to not USD, but it's tied to fiat because of whatever you can do in the Meso market and then slightly cheaper in the black market. A bill today might be totally different than a bill a month from now.
Yeah.
So
probably
it kind
will.
of doesn't matter what currency it's in. You just have to pay attention.
Yeah, which I'm not doing. Just saying, I mean, it's not like I have hundreds of billions either. It's like 80 or something, or 70 or something. But I was made from 3 bills, so it's nice.
Yeah, that's really good then. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Well, I'll catch you later. Yep.
Yep. All right. Bye.